And a warm welcome to this RTS Futures event, 4 Stories on the Edge, championing new writing and directing talent. And we have a wealth of that with us today. Thank you for joining us. I am Caroline Frost, and I'll be your host for this session. If you're new to RTS Futures sessions, then an enormous welcome. RTS Futures are crucial to the TV industry. They hold 3 monthly events for graduates and those in the early stages of their TV career. We cover a wide range of inspiring topics across all of TV output: drama, comedy, journalism, reality TV, pretty much everything, you name it. And through these events, the hope is that you pick up lots of tips and guidance on everything from CV writing to networking, the big schmooze to help you along your way. We hope you get something out of today, learning more about On the Edge, which has been championing new talent, a key strategy for Blacklight, a production company, and how important the 4 Stories initiative is, and how Samantha and Nadira's first experience of working on a television project matched up, hopefully, to their dreams, but we'll hear more from them. This will be your opportunity to ask them questions towards the end of the session. So feel free to submit your questions at any time on the chat or the button at the bottom of the Zoom, and I'll keep an eye on them. So I'm going to be asking them a handful of stuff, and then I'll pick up as many questions as I can towards the end of the session. What else can I tell you? We'll get to them properly. We'll meet them in a minute. They are Ben Bickerton and Phil Trethowan. I hope I pronounced that right. Give us a wave. They are the team from Blacklight, and they have created, they're the founding fathers of On the Edge. Now, between them, they have 20 years of experience making award-winning popular TV, drama and film. Credits include Being Hum, The Curse of Steptoe, and this is the 3rd series of On the Edge, which is a drama anthology series written and directed entirely by brand new talent. So I mean, they're doing something extraordinary. We will hear more about that. Samantha O'Rourke, give us a wave, is a queer northern writer-director based in North Wales. She is the writer of Mincemeat. She was a writer on attachment for Liverpool's Everyman Playhouse and is part of an artist-led project, Future Forms, at Donmar. This is quite an achievement for such a young person. She's already currently developing her first feature film, supported by film. Amrani is a British-Algerian film and TV director. Her first short film, Fly, premiered at the BFI Film Festival in 2018, and she is the director of Mincemeat, which is one of the brand new series of On the Edge. So thank you for being here with us today, everybody, to share your experience of making this series. The 3 episodes actually broadcast last night on Channel 4, but they're all available on all 4, obviously. And I really would love you to tell your friends and family about how brilliant they are and experience them for yourself. This session will last around an hour in total, so I'll speak for about 40 minutes. But most importantly, you get to put your questions to this team. So, or if you need to tweet or put it on social media, it's #RTS Futures. So please support that as well. Before we meet everybody properly and hear exactly what they experienced, let's have a short clip to remind ourselves of what Mincemeat looked like and sounded like and was all about. Can we run the clip of Mincemeat, please? Oh, the heartbreaking moment of the meat-free sausages. Oh, goodness me. Right, where should we start? Let's talk to, sorry, I was being a bit casual earlier with the Zoom etiquette. I should say, if you want to submit your questions on the Q&A, obviously everyone knows that by now. Let's start with Ben and Philip. So you are the exec producers of the series and the previous 2 series, which I should add has been award-winning and brought all sorts of plaudits, quite rightly. So this is one of 3. So we've got Mincemeat, which is rom-com. We've got Cradled, which would call probably horror story. And then, of course, Road Trip, which is a genre all to its own. What's the common thread through them editorially, creatively, and where did you get that from?
So, yeah, so each year, what we're looking for is really 3 very unique individual films. But what we like is if there's some sort of, I suppose it's quite a loose thematic theme that runs through them. And this year it's about mental health. It's about mental health and family, and I guess more specifically about parent-child relationships. Particularly, I think it's about children whose parents are mentally unwell, and what that feels like and how you cope with that. So that's yeah, I'd say that's the theme that runs through it. It's not really led by us. The way we make this show is that it's an open submission, so that I mean, literally thousands of writers apply, and they apply with their scripts, but we don't make any of the scripts that they apply with. You know, the writers that speak to us, we invite to interview, and they come with ideas. We ask them to bring an idea that is important to them, or personal to them, or just that excites them. And we interview around 50, maybe more, and you start to see common themes coming up. And we develop a number of them, and then pick. And sometimes we have to sort of suggest a different angle to a story so that it fits the theme of the others. But it sort of emerges organically, I would say.
And Philip, do you agree with that?
Yes, I would entirely. Yeah, that was. It's funny. It's. I don't know if I don't know if you describe it as a zeitgeist, but certainly, like, we had a lot of ideas in and around mental health. I mean, you know, obviously it's getting talked about a lot more, isn't it? You know, and rightly so. So we felt when we saw those ideas emerging, we felt it was also, you know, it's an important conversation to be part of. So we embraced the fact that we were getting so many ideas in that sort of thematic universe, albeit that they're, as you've seen, like incredibly different ideas, incredibly different tones and approaches to the subject matter.
But yeah, so there's this common thread, but there's also the genre aspect, the rom-com, it's the nod. So Mincemeat, although we didn't see much of the rom in that clip, or in fact much of the com, there is both rom and com very present, I think, in it. It's very sweet when the pair of them first meet and get to know each other. But similarly for the horror and the road trip, with the three ideas, is it easier to then go to somebody like Channel 4 or another commissioner if you've got these kind of genre boxes ticked? Does that help them understand what you're trying to do?
I mean, On the Edge is unique in that, and this really is unique in television, in that Channel 4 commission it blind. They're not, it's not dependent on the ideas. They're commissioning the idea of promoting new talent and making, you know, and making these films, whatever they then turn out to be. So there was no, we weren't appealing to a commissioner in that respect. That said, I think if you are dealing with, you know, let's say weighty subject matter or difficult subject matter, or you know, what could be perceived as very serious subject matter, I think if you're also leaning into a popular genre, be that road movie, horror, rom-com, whatever, if you're using that, you're making that subject matter more accessible to people in a way that they might, you know, if you just saw, well, here is a film about, you know, about someone having a mental crisis, you might think, oh, you know, that sounds a bit grim, it's not for me. But here is a rom-com, you know, about a girl living with her mum who's a hoarder or whatever. It's, you know, leaning into genre can bring an audience and make, you know, make difficult subjects, you know, palatable, entertaining, you know, and in the end, more effective as well on people, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, accessible and yet new. So familiar but stimulating.
Yeah.
Could you both tell me a little bit more about the ethos of this initiative? You said they commission blind. I mean, that's a huge responsibility for you, a huge amount of trust. What are they wanting then? What new talent, but to do what? And what's the aim of the entire initiative?
Well, the aim is to reach out and find voices that are underrepresented in the industry, So it is for people who don't, who are, still looking for an opportunity, still looking for a way in to the industry. Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic that they do this, and it is extraordinary, really, because if you get on the scheme and you're one of those free writers, your film is being made, whatever the quality of your script, and we work tirelessly to help get those scripts into really good shape. But we're not like making decisions based on whether or not it will be commissioned, because it is already commissioned.
What a gift.
And I think that it's, I think it is, so it's underrepresented voices, but I think it's also about bold ideas, exciting ideas, exciting writing. And we tend to look for things that are that have some substance and have some meaning and are about something. But also always we want to entertain and thrill people and inspire people and upset people and all of that.
So if it's unique and much needed, because obviously, I mean, this has been much discussed, that the circle, to make telly, you have to know somebody in telly, and to know somebody, you have to be making telly. Apart from this scheme, which obviously sort of disrupts all of that to great positive end, there does seem to be, I think, relatively little movement. You see the same names both in front of the camera and behind it over and over again. Have you seen things changing apart from this scheme during your time in the industry? Is it changing for the better, or are more things like this needed, do you think?
I think it is changing for the better. I think that what the unique thing about this scheme is that something actually gets made. You actually is hands-on. You do it. And I think there's a lot of schemes that are very commendable and necessary, and people can get a lot out of them. But they might be a scheme that, I don't know, takes you as far as developing a script, but not beyond that, or takes you as far as shadowing a director on a pre-existing show, but not beyond that. And I think that what is needed is, and companies across the board are putting money into those sort of schemes. But I think what is really needed is the trust, as we have on the edge, the trust that this new talent can actually go that extra mile and make stuff. Because I think it's only on the floor, it's only at the coalface that you really learn your trade, because your craft as a writer or a director is, it's coping with all the 1,000,001 limitations and problems of filming that come up all the time. Now you can't possibly know that if it's if you're just in a seminar, or you see what I mean. So I think it's the trust is needed to put give new talent practical practical hands-on real jobs rather than less practical schemes. And then just to answer another bit of what you asked about, I think at that top end of TV and film, you definitely see the same names, and that's it's been the case forever. It's because I think the more expensive shows get, the bigger the budget gets, the more sort of prime time, and important in that respect those shows are. I think, maybe some commissioners would disagree with me, but my opinion is, as the stakes rise, people get more risk averse, because the stakes are higher. There's more to lose, there's more money to lose, there's more audience to lose, there's your job to lose in the end. I think people just get more naturally risk averse, and hence I think you see familiar faces and like inverted commas reliable creatives doing the jobs again and again. And that's not to say they're not reliable and they're not brilliant, because Of course, many of them are, but equally, it's not to say that somebody less experienced couldn't also deliver something as impressive, as remarkable, as expensive on that higher level of TV and film.
Well, we've seen a few examples when they haven't proved to be quite so reliable as well.
We certainly have, haven't we? We certainly have, and we
Literally
shan't mention any of them.
No. Well, so there we go. So Samantha, no pressure at all, but basically the whole trust of an entire commissioning broadcaster, national primetime broadcaster, the trust and budget of an entire production company with 2 seasoned vets at its helm, and in you come. So tell us about, well, first of all, why did you, let's start right at the beginning of the acorn for you, telling this story. Why did you want to tell this story in particular? Was this the story you set out to tell?
Hello. Yeah, so I'd kind of had this thing for a while that had just been kind of in my head. I tend to get kind of fixated with almost like a curiosity. So I'd been kind of really interested in this sort of similarity that I felt like I kind of spotted between hoarding and nationalism. And the way that kind of nationalism involves holding on to this kind of idea of the past, and the way that hoarding is like holding on to the past via kind of physical objects. And I was just really interested in the like psychology of that and this kind of desire not to live in the present. And I thought maybe that was being kind of driven by a kind of internal kind of dissatisfaction. And that came from quite a personal thing. I've seen it kind of coexist within people in my own life. And I just thought it was a kind of really specific dynamic that I hadn't really seen before, that seemed like a kind of rich starting point. And then because like obviously xenophobia has been sort of so dominant in terms of public discourse at the moment, it just felt like a good way into exploring it and kind of being really specific and showing that kind of home environment where those ideas are being promoted. Yeah, that's kind of how it started.
There's quite a lot of big themes to squash into 25 minutes, isn't it? And how did you get the gig? What happened?
So, well, I just applied. So I kind of make this rule because I didn't know anyone. I kind of make myself this rule that I just apply for everything. And then I kind of, and obviously there's not, in terms of TV and film, there's not that many open call outs, but I make sure I apply and then I try and forget all about it. So then it's either nothing ever happens or it's like a really nice surprise. So I was very surprised when I got the interview for this. I'd submitted, I remember that I really liked what the sort of submission was asking for, because they didn't ask you to answer a lot of questions. They just said like, submit something that sounds like you, which I thought was a really kind of helpful thing. And the fact it also didn't have to be screenwriting, because that's the thing when you haven't really done any screenwriting, I feel like it is better to kind of let me submit a play, because then, you know, it's the area I already write in. So I'd kind of written a play about young women in real, and it was kind of funny and weird and political and quite personal and about kind of a forgotten place. So I was like, yeah, okay, this sums up a lot of my areas of interest. And then Blacklight really liked it. And then it was the fact that how open they were to dialogue about what might be a good fit for this scheme and the kind of style of work that it kind of suits. And it seemed like the kind of nationalism hoarding kind of exploration was a really good fit for it. So yeah, and then there's a few stages before you get to kind of knowing that you're definitely doing the script, but that was really helpful to kind of figure it out more. And yeah, just the fact that I never kind of felt silly for asking a lot of questions because it was completely new to me, was really, really good. Yeah. And then made it somehow to the final 3, which I think are fully processed. So.
Question back to Ben and Philip. That question or request, write something that is you. Does that come from you two, or does that come from upstream at Channel 4?
No, I think that comes from us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're just looking for people's voices, really. And I think some people think, oh, I'll write an episode of On the Edge and submit that. But which is fine, but I don't think that's helpful really, and I don't think we've ever taken someone on who's done that. because I think it's better to do something that is really, is your best work so far. Whether that can be a radio play, or it could be, has to be dramatic writing. It could be a radio play, it could be a stage play, it could be a screenplay. And yeah, we're looking for someone's voice and to be struck by someone's voice. We're not looking at a type of writing or a particular genre. It could be comedy. It could be anything really.
I see. So, Samantha, if I could ask you then the process. So a couple of things. How long was the day you submitted before the day you got the phone call or the email to say you were one of the three? How long was that?
Oh, that's such a, from the initial submission. That is a good question. I'm not sure about when I submitted it, because like I say, I deliberately don't keep track. But in terms of going for the interview, the first meeting and then getting it, I don't think it was that long. I think maybe like, I don't know, 6 weeks. Does that sound right? Yeah. Okay,
well, that sounds sane keeping as well, because a lot of these schemes are drawn out, and especially I've spoken to a lot of actors, it's very much make yourself available. We're not going to tell you if you've got something, but you have to make yourself, and it's just all a bit torturous. So 6 weeks is kind of manageable, I think. What you haven't mentioned in your ideas board is rom-com. So at what point and I guess I'm asking about the process of drafting, feedback, tweaking. Yeah. Did you feel that you were able to keep hold of your ideas in your basket, or were they kind of pulled apart and it became something quite different from what you were expecting?
No, not at all. I think that's what I kind of have found so special about this process, was just considering that I was brand new to it, I always felt so trusted, which was kind of just like really, really lovely at kind of every stage in the process. And I really enjoyed the way in which we would kind of break down the kind of beats and discuss every element of it. It kind of suited how I think about the work anyway. But also I think because like when I feel kind of like choose writers that they really trust your idea and like why you want to do it, that means that like, I don't know, if we did have things where it was like, oh, maybe this could happen, and if I could kind of like explain, like, yeah, if I could explain myself, then nothing was ever pushed onto me ever. It was proper treat to just be trusted in that way. And I think I always try, my work is always kind of like social and political, but always finding kind of weird domestic ways in. And I love a rom-com, so it just, but weirdly for me, all of that made sense to have all that stuff together in one way. Yeah.
So yes, I mean, the characters, there aren't that many, but they're very fleshed out, considering it's a relatively short piece for that all to happen. I think we all naturally have a sympathy with Jane, your central protagonist, but also gradually over the course of it, her mother as well. Was that something that was intentional from the beginning in your head, or was that something that just sort of came out, not necessarily even by you, but just by the end of it, there was sympathy for her as well?
I think it was something that actually came out, and I think it was also something that Ben and Phil were quite supportive of, that was an important element. But I don't know, I think because I was writing kind of from like drawing on kind of real life, writing about people that I know, and so obviously she's got a lot of problems in terms of trauma and grief, and I feel like that kind of negative headspace can leave people really susceptible to ideologies that kind of like fit with that negativity, and gives them a kind of external force to kind of focus on and blame. And so I don't know, it doesn't excuse it, and I don't have a lot of patience for it. But equally, I think I'm going to challenge it. It's really important to kind of actually understand where it's coming from. And yeah, and it was nice. I feel like as someone actually from that kind of community and that kind of background, it felt good to actually kind of like, I don't know, be more precise about it, because I think we get a lot of discussion and it's kind of either let people be xenophobic, which is you know, like it's their right, or it's kind of just the idea that these people are kind of backwards. So I think, yeah, I think by kind of making it more nuanced and kind of showing her vulnerability, it doesn't excuse the harm she does, but it kind of shows where she sits in a kind of, yeah, more three-dimensional way, I think.
So you've mentioned the P word, political. I have to ask you, so is there a bigger mess? I mean, as you said, your ideas are political and then you go in via the domestic and the intimate. Is there a bigger political message here about the burden of being a young carer, about the lack of a system to look after her mother, all of these people? Is that something that you're keen to convey in work like this?
Yeah, 100%. I think that there hasn't been enough infrastructure for a really long time, but at the moment it feels like sort of week by week it's getting more dismantled. And I think people have a lot of energy to be sort of angry about politics, but I don't know, we seem to be missing the national sort of outcry and fury about the things that day to day make normal people's life harder. Like, I don't think people realize that, like, I don't think people who haven't engaged with mental health services or social services kind of realize the gaps in the infrastructure. Like, if you try to get a kind of mental health crisis team, like, unless they're kind of at serious risk of physical harm to themselves or others, they can't really do anything. And then the other thing, the other kind of thing you can do is ring and get put on a couple of years waiting list for some counselling sessions. So it's like, God, there's a lot of gaps there, that leaves kind of family and particularly young people trying to fill that themselves. So yeah, it was definitely very much about that, because there's this idea that people should sort themselves out, but I'm just not sure exactly literally what that means. In terms of what you expect from these young people in those small towns.
I'm really impressed by the wealth of your specific knowledge about this. I mean, I think that without that all being on the screen, the passion, that's exactly what Ben and Philip have been talking about, finding somebody with a voice, with something to say. And the gaps are there, aren't they, for the viewer to see in between and read in between those lines. I guess my final question for you is, in that case, knowing so much about what you know about this subject, is this a story of hope because we care about them now, or hopelessness and you just want us to go away with lots of sympathy? How do you want to feel by the end?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think people like Jane and Mark are hopeful, because I think they kind of sum up the idea that we can kind of take responsibility for kind of watching where we get our information and where we get our ideas from. And I think if we can do that and kind of unlearn things and stop causing harm to each other, then that's like a positive thing. And then also Nish escaping and getting a girlfriend who hopefully isn't a bigot, like thrilled for Nish, because I love them, but like, you know, sometimes things aren't healthy, so yay for Nish escaping.
And you avoided, I don't want to spoil it too much for people who've yet to enjoy it, but there was almost the risk of a Disney ending, wasn't there? But you avoided the cliche, which I think at this early stage of your career is completely commendable, because it would
Thank you.
very easy to fall into a few trope traps, shall we say. So let's talk to Nadira, director, first time director, so equally fresh off the tree. Could you talk to us, Nadira, about how you got involved with this scheme and how you ended up getting this impressive gig?
So I had watched the first generation of On the Edge on TV and really loved it. So for the second generation, it was an open application, so I just applied. And I got to the interview stage last time and I didn't make it. And I got some really good feedback about working more with actors, because I submitted my short film Fly, which was kind of like a hyper drama. There's elements of it that was documentary and a bit realism. So anyway, I went off and directed a play, an hour-long play at the Bunker Theatre, and then I reapplied for this generation. and then got to interview stage. They send the people who are the directors who are going to be interviewed 3 of the draft scripts. So I read all 3, and I just fell in love with Mincemeat, and I just loved the script. I loved what Samantha did. It was funny, it was sad, it looked at class, looked at race, but it also looked at this young girl who decided that she wanted to be a vegetarian, and how she navigated that new route of independence through her mum, who quite clearly had some issues. So it just encapsulated so many feelings, and it was the kind of TV that I wanted to make. So I just went for Mincemeat and then did a pitch and won.
Fantastic. Congratulations. If I could just take you back, because I think anybody trying to follow a similar path will be very intrigued from your perspective about the difference between interview number 1, where you almost got the goal, and interview number 2, where you crossed the line. What did you do differently? What did you offer by then that was different? What made the difference?
I think it was experience and my experience working with actors. And I think it's really important that I say that I went through this process twice, because it was the same thing with my funding for my first film, for Film London, for Fly. I went, I applied for it and didn't get it the first time, but then I got it the second time. And I think it's really important that people who are applying for schemes realize that it is so competitive. Like, there are so many amazingly talented people, but you just have to be persistent and you have to keep going. And looking back on it, I'm so glad that I didn't get it the first time, because I don't think I would have actually been ready to have done this. And I think having had that year and the opportunity to direct a play and work with 2 actors over a long period of time, it meant that when I got the opportunity to direct TV, I knew what I was doing with the cast that I was given. So I just think experience and just going out and doing things and learning.
Fair enough. I think it's absolutely key takeaway, isn't it? There are going to be knocks. There have already been knocks. There will be more knocks for every single one of us. So it's about taking that and going away and picking up and filling in the gaps for yourself. Incredibly empowering, I hope. But directing, does take confidence at any stage of anyone's career. And there you are, as we've said, given a big old budget and a veteran company, a big toolbox to play with suddenly. What did you lean on to make a success of it?
I think what I wanted to do was to kind of create some TV that I would have wanted to have watched if I was younger, or a younger version of myself. And I just tried to really get into the head of Jane. And I do things like, I made a playlist of music that I felt like an 18-year-old teenager now would listen to. And I tried to really get into the headspace of Jane. And I think what gave me the confidence to go for it was just me trying to tap into like that authentic kind of inner girl headspace. And I was just trying to make the kind of show that I would have wanted to watch if I was younger, because I grew up watching things like Misfits and like a lot of like really incredible things on Channel 4 that were just very brave and bold. So I think a lot of the confidence just came from trying to make the TV that I wanted to watch, if that makes sense.
Right. And how much, again, feedback, I guess, interference, let's call it feedback, from your exec producers did you have? Was it from beginning to end? Did you change your process because of the feedback, because of their sort of tweaks on the tiller of your boat? How did you respond to that?
No, it was brilliant, because I basically come from much more of a music video commercial background. So it's been lots of sets, but I've never really been on a TV set. So in terms of like learning the process, like it was amazing to have like the producers that understood that this is your first time doing it. So like helping you, but also giving you the creative freedom to actually be brave and do what you want. And I think it's such a great scheme for like allowing you to step into that world, but also learn in an environment that is also quite nurturing. Like there are 2 other directors on this scheme, Chloe and Theo, and we like really helped each other, even though we were working on completely separate films with completely separate writers. it was a brilliant opportunity to also have like directors in the same position as you. And I just found the whole thing really nurturing, but also quite exciting. It was really exciting and quite fun.
What was the most challenging aspect of it?
I think the script was so fantastic. It was also just trying to fit it all into the amount of space that we had, in terms of fitting it into like a half an hour episode. So I think one task that was really difficult, I guess, was getting it all done in the shoot days that we had, because you've got a supermarket, you've got a house, you've got, you know, a bus, you've got all these different locations. So trying to fit it into 8 shoot days, I guess time was the biggest obstacle. I think also we haven't mentioned the C word of COVID yet, but it was also a challenge doing this all amidst the pandemic, and it was actually postponed a year, and then we were shooting with COVID protocols, and we had to be tested, and doing it with a mask on, and all of these constraints were quite tricky. But I also thought that it was just, everyone was just so grateful to be doing it, that it was worth all the safety of keeping the crew and everyone safe while still trying to make this piece of work. Gosh,
just think how straightforward your next production will feel once you've done all that.
I don't know, there's still COVID protocols.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we talked about the performance and how your year away with theatre helped with your relations with your actors. I'm intrigued by the technical aspects. I found the shooting of it, the actual look of the piece, very quirky, very in keeping with the awkwardness and the prickliness of the characters. How did you go about creating that? Did you watch lots of other things, or did you create that out of your imagination? Do you know what I mean? The different pace, how it was fast 1 minute and then suddenly very still. Where were you working from? What sort of palette were you working from?
Well, I worked with an incredible cinematographer, Olin, and I guess because we obviously had the whole of lockdown, I was watching a lot of TV and a lot of films, and if there was anything that I saw that I liked, or anything that I thought, oh yeah, that would be really cool, I'd write it down. But I think one of the main things that I wanted to do was I wanted to get into Jane's head and like Jane's perspective, and particularly with her disgust of meat. So the opening shot is obviously Jane looking at a pack of sausages that are £1.99 in the supermarket. And I just really wanted to have that really gross feeling of not wanting to eat meat, because that essentially is her character's stimulus for the whole journey of the film. So having these really close-up shots and using an Optex lens, me and Olin really worked on the idea of like getting really close into her eyes and getting really close into the meat, and like trying to have that visceral feeling of wanting the viewer to want to be vegetarian. So it was also just really very much character-led. I was really interested in the idea of making the domestic space feel quite claustrophobic, particularly with the hoarding. And a way in which I thought we could heighten that was to make the supermarket very pristine. And so we had like a scene, like a pan shot with lots of pastel coloured egg boxes, and lots of ultra wide shots outside, like Nish and Jane in the park, which were meant to highlight the claustrophobia in the house. And I was meant to mirror Jane's feeling of being trapped and feeling, you know, not quite herself indoors, but exploring herself more outdoors. So there definitely was like character and emotional decisions made in the way that we shot this film.
Mm-hmm. Were there any scenes that you were nervous of shooting that seemed bigger than others?
I think the riot, the post-March protest scene, it was actually a lot of fun. It was quite fun. The extras were brilliant. They like really went for it. But I remember at the time thinking, oh, is this going to be big enough? Is this going to translate enough? But shooting it slow motion and having her wearing pajamas outside and putting the classical music underneath, we put Ludovic Rinaldi He's an Italian composer and yeah, I think all of that made it feel grandeur. So when you have that moment when she's in the supermarket with Ern, it built up to the tension of her confronting her mum in the supermarket aisle. But yeah.
Okay, so please do, listeners and viewers, do throw in any questions you have for the team, because as you can see, it's quite a unique process and a rare door into the industry. And I think it's very, very valuable to hear exactly just how, I guess, unique it is, and to perhaps people can learn from this and more schemes can come up. I have a couple more questions for each of you as well. So Nadira, if I can just start with you about the casting. Did you have anything to do with that, or was it a pleasant surprise to know that you were going to get people of the caliber of Amy and Rosie?
No, I was very involved in the casting. We had an amazing casting director, Daniel Edwards. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, when I actually read the script for the first time, I hadn't even got the director role. When I read it, I thought about Amy Lou Wood.
Really?
Yeah, because it was set, it was set near Manchester, and it was like, it had this comedy to it and this like rawness to it. And I had recently watched Sex Education and I loved her performance in it. But in the back of my mind, I was always like, she'd be good for this. But I didn't know if we'd necessarily get her. And then I had watched Nikhil Palmer, who played Nish. I saw him in Bradford Boys, mm-hmm. and he's recently been in This Way Up. So I saw those two, and I thought their performances and other things were great, but also I just really rated and liked the fact that they were both Northern, and I thought for me it was quite important that it was quite authentic and we were doing a good job in what we were trying to portray. And yeah, together they had such cool chemistry, and they got this kind of rom-com awkward teenage love affair right. So yeah.
And also my final question for you is about the authority of the director, because you are young and fresh and new to the scene, and you're basically telling a bunch of people more seasoned and more experienced than you what you'd like them to do. How did you find that process?
It's just fun. It's just fun. Like, I love being a director. I also think that I know I should be. It sounds like in your question I should be daunted by this process, but I think
I'm
it's
curious as to how somebody might be daunted, but how you overcome it, I guess.
But I also just think in a weird way, it's also like it's just very rare to get an opportunity where you're given such an amazing script and you're given such incredible actors to try and make something original. So I think it was just pure joy, and I had so much fun, and I guess it was just like allowing myself to be learning while also being confident in what I was trying to do and trying to aim for was like this inner kind of teenager. I was trying to appeal to my inner teenager, and just the crew, our Welsh crew, like all the people that worked on board in this, even working with my DOP Olin, like it was just such a collaboration that it was just really a joy just working with everyone.
Great. Samantha, for you, very different experience, because you're writing, you're on your own, you have none of the crowd scene problems or the challenges of authority or trying to work out how to scene. But my question is, as a young person working, do you find it sometimes quite lonely? How do you get over the solitude of the task ahead of you?
Oh, yeah, it is quite lonely. Thank you. Yeah, no. I think one of the things I started doing over kind of lockdown, which I actually feel was really, really helpful, was literally just like, probably other people do this already. I'm just a bit slow, but I I kind of just found creatives who I kind of thought were exciting, or I had things in common with them, and kind of reached out to them on Twitter and made loads of lovely Zoom friends, and it was really nice. So I think that was a good way to do it. And to be honest, I found this particular project I didn't find lonely, because Ben and Phil were just so present in terms of kind of being able to kind of, you know, if I had like a random thought, I could kind of speak to them, you know, immediately or the next morning to kind of go through it and stuff. So it can be really lonely and daunting. And I've definitely felt that on many other projects, but this one I felt quite taken care of, which was really nice.
But the tip is to reach out, to speak to like-minded people going through very similar, sort of climbing similar mountains. And
yeah, 100%. And I think definitely in terms of, especially like coming from, there's a bit of in terms of if you're coming from a world that kind of like you don't know people in the industry, it can feel really kind of it's almost like like you're kind of trying to figure out what everyone else knows that you don't know, and quite a lot of imposter syndrome as well, in terms of like, what am I kind of what am I missing, what don't I know, always assuming that that I don't know what I need to know, kind of thing. So yeah, making contacts or bonds with people who can kind of get where you're coming from, I think is the most important thing, definitely. And just say hello to people. I used to be really scared of like being like, oh, hello, I'm like, you know, let's be friends, but actually everyone's really nice, so do that.
Great to hear. My final question for Ben and Philip, I guess, on the back of hearing all of that, is for you two, what is the difference between working with seasoned professionals, longer in the tooth, and fresh, new, I'm going to say young, but that is not necessarily the case, is it, with this? But just definitely a burst of new energy. What is the difference for you with working with those different types of creatives?
One of them is more fun. I shan't say which.
No, let's have both good and bad. Let's have the challenges and the benefits.
I think that I always feel that I learn something on each series. I feel like I've learned something, because people come with different approaches, and maybe they're less jaded, and I don't know, like Nadira was using this probe lens. Was it called a probe? I think it was, which I'd never seen before. It's sort of like we would usually use a grip for a top shot, but this was this weird lens that it was much quicker, did the same thing. But that's just like one example, you know. There's sort of multiple examples of that where I feel like, you know, I hope the people learn, and I think they do, but I think we do as well. We learn as well. And I think that can happen with our older talent as well. But there's something about the freshness, the kind of excitement of it, the sort of going on this adventure that feels more unique, I suppose.
Yeah. Is there a challenge to match that?
Sorry?
Is there a challenge that must come alongside that? Or is it all...
Oh yeah, definitely. It's really hard.
Yeah.
No, because you know, for both the writers and the directors, I think it can be exposing as a thing, and I mean it definitely is challenging. I mean it's all filmmaking, I think, is challenging, and your ambitions always are a bit too big for what you can achieve, and but when you've experienced, you've got all this wealth of knowledge to draw back on how you actually get it, and you've got the confidence of that. But if you don't have that experience, I think it is harder. So, and it's a different job for us, because I think that we're probably more involved than we would be, but that's nice as well. You know, it's enjoyable.
Good.
So yeah, we're more involved, I think, with the newer talent than we would be with experienced talent.
And for each of you, let's quickly go round. What's next? Nadira, what's coming up next?
I can't tell you.
Oh, that's exciting. All right. Well, we shall watch with excitement when we see your name pop up. We'll know that that was the thing you couldn't tell us about, but best of luck. What about you, Samantha?
So I'm writing a treatment for another weird comedy drama with Ben Phil, and and developing my first feature, which is like a queer historic Welsh working class magical realism thing. So yeah.
Great. Okay, sounds great. And Ben and Philip, what's next on the slate for you?
Well, we have heaps of stuff in development at different stages. Some of which, touch wood, will be going ahead soon. But then I guess most importantly for this call, we'll be doing series 4 of On the Edge, which we haven't got dates confirmed yet with the channel, but if people keep an eye on our website, Channel 4 website, then we're hoping to announce that soon. And we'll, of course, we'll let RTS Futures know as well, so they can announce it to everyone.
Brilliant. So the takeaways today then are, so fail your first interview, reach out to creatives, keep your eye on the Channel 4 website, and apply for everything. Can you think of anything else that I have forgotten? But I mean, it's all there, isn't it? I really hope that people listening and watching this today will feel inspired that that these two young ladies, fresh, full of talent, bags of talent, but had to keep knocking at quite a few doors to get to this position that they're in, with their first primetime offering still available on All 4 and going out on TV last night. So well done, everybody. That's it for this session, but I'm sure that please stay tuned for the next RTS Futures panel and stay in touch. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.